Hey, what's up everybody? Darius here with another tutorial for y'all. In today's tutorial, we're going to be on Microsoft Flight Simulator 10, and we're going to be doing an ILS landing, which will continue our series on tutorials. And if you recall, in our first two tutorials, we just used a GPS approach to our airport, and even though we were stepping towards realism, that's not typically something you would actually see in the real world, in commercial aviation. Today we're going to be using an ILS approach, which is something you would see in a commercial aviation world. And what an ILS approach is basically where you will input the frequencies and the heading of the runway you're going to be landing at. And once that runway connects with that frequency you're transmitting, it'll automatically glide the airplane down to the runway, making sure you're lined up and also making sure you're at the correct altitude. So once we are connected to the ILS runway, we'll actually not have to worry about our altitude or our location, because the autopilot and the ILS will do everything for us. The ILS standing for Instrument Landing System. So we'll need to set everything up first. Today we're going to be using a Boeing 737, very standard aircraft, obviously probably the most used and most widely recognized commercial aviation plane in the entire world of all time, more than likely. So there's the 737. We'll be in St. Louis. We'll be starting out. Change it to midday so we get good visibility. And of course, like we did last time, click on flight planner, starting in St. Louis. And today we're actually going to be going to Midway in Chicago. And the reason for that is it is a tricky approach. The runway is notoriously short and surrounded on basically all four sides by residential areas. So it would be a tricky landing without the ILS approach. So we're going to be choosing that. And then we're just going to leave it on direct because we're going to make some changes to our route. So as you can see here, just like our last tutorial, the purple line, or fuchsia, whatever, maybe it is fuchsia, whatever color you want to call it, is our route to Midway. And so what we want to do is manipulate that route, so we'll be actually on the runway. So as you can see here, this is Midway. Let me get you a better view of the airport. So this is Midway Airport, smack dab in the middle of Chicago. And as you can see, there's 3 green arrows, and these are called ILS feathers. This indicates that the runway in this heading has an ILS approach. As you can see, there's way more runways than there are these ILS feathers. That just means that only these 3 approaches have the instrument landing system. So say we came in from here, so we're coming in from the northeast, we don't have an ILS approach. So if we do come from the northeast, we would have to do a visual approach. But since we're coming in from the southwest, we have an instrument landing approach right here, an ILS approach right here. So what we want to do is zoom out a little bit, and you'll see these blue triangles. These are basically waypoints that'll guide you to that approach. So what we want to do is manipulate our route so that we will be on the glide scope, as they call it, towards that runway. So we're going to manipulate it by just clicking on the fuchsia line and go ahead and just drop it to where that line is right there, is connected to those blue triangles. And what you can continue to do to make the route even more precise is go ahead and make some more waypoints, like manipulate it to where it's like right there, ILS 4. If you click OK, it should go ahead and, yeah, there we go. So now we are appropriately lined up with this ILS approach. Perfect. So as you can see, this is going to be runway 4R or 4 right. And before we even start the flight, what we want to do is get some information on that runway. So what we're going to do is go ahead and click on midway. Oh, I didn't click on midway. And we want some information. Here we go. We want some information on the airport because we're going to need this. So first we're going to go ahead and look. As you can see, remember those 3 green feathers that we saw that I indicated was ILS? So as you can see, there's plenty more runways at midway, but only these 3 have an ILS approach, which means that we can only use one of these 3 for an ILS approach. So what you really want to do is make yourself familiar with, especially with these 2 numbers. If you're using runway 4R, we want to know the ILS frequency is 111.5 and the heading is 44 degrees. So what you can write it down, you can print it out if you want to. I just like making a snipping tool. It's easy. Just go ahead and do that, and then you know exactly what you have, and you can like minimize it. You don't even have to save it. I'll just minimize it, and you'll have all this information that you need, because that will become important. Perfect. So we can go ahead and click cancel that, and I think I made another waypoint here by mistake. That'll be fine. So we can go ahead and save this. So that it'll load. Perfect. And we will. And we're ready to go. That's it. That's all we need to do for now. We'll need to do one more once we are airborne. So we can go ahead and click fly now. So we've loaded in. We are on the active runway here at St. Louis Lambert International Airport. So for the beginning setup of this video, of this flight rather, it's going to be pretty much the same as our previous 2 tutorial videos, because we're going to let the GPS take over the first part of the flight. Once we get closer to the Chicagoland area, we're going to switch on over to the ILS approach. But until that point, we're going to do the same thing as we've done in our previous videos, where the GPS will take over. First, we're going to set our altitude to about 14,000 feet. From St. Louis to Chicago is about a 45-minute flight in the air. So we're going to be about 14,000 feet. It's a bit low compared to like commercial standards, but for the sake of the video, we want to get on the ILS approach early, just so we can get everything set up and have time to speak and tell you what's going on. So we're going to go ahead and keep the flight pretty low. We're going to set our navigation hold switch, which is this one, and put this to GPS. And if we open up our GPS, we can see that waypoint we created towards Chicago is already loaded in. There's Chicago right there. So we're pretty much good to go. We're also going to set our speeds to about 335 knots, just so that we don't get that annoying overspeed warning. Perfect. So right now we can lower the flaps, get ready for takeoff. We are good to go. If we press Shift and Z 3 times, as we've done in our previous videos, we're going to get this information bar, and it's going to come in handy, of course. So flaps are down for takeoff. We are good to go. We can go ahead and throttle up. And we'll be heading right as soon as we're airborne towards Chicago. We'll pull back on the joystick about 140, 150 knots. Right about now, we can go ahead and pull back. Perfect. Go ahead and pull up the gear. And slowly but surely start heading right towards Chicago. Matter of fact, we can let the autopilot take over for us and let it fly to Chicago. And then obviously auto throttle on and our speed as well. So it'll take control of our speed as well, making sure we don't stall nor overspeed. Since that's doing its thing, we'll go ahead and press Shift and 2 at the same time, and this radio will pop up. We want to focus our attention on this nav 1 bar, smack dab in the middle. Remember that snipping tool screenshot we took of the runway and the information regarding that runway? Well, we found out that the frequency was 111.5 for Midway's runway 4 right, which is where we're coming into. So we can't manipulate the active, only the standby, as you can see. So put 111.5, or in your case, wherever airport you're landing at, that runway's frequency in the standby. For our case at Midway, it's 111.5. There it is. If we hit this, the 111.5 becomes active, which is what we want for now. So we can go ahead and press Shift 2 again, and that'll go away. Now, if you remember also from that snipping tool screenshot, the course, or the heading was 44 degrees, and we want to put that in the course. You would think it would go into heading, but for an ILS approach, the heading will actually go in the course. I'm going to go ahead and put that to 44 degrees. So we've got everything set up for the ILS landing. If we open up our GPS, we got 30 minutes to go. We're going to go ahead and speed this up as so, just so this video doesn't drag on at all. So once we get closer to the airport, you're going to notice a few things. Once we are on the ILS approach, and that frequency we just put in our radio connects with the frequency of the runway, we're going to notice a Morse code beep, like a beep, 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 indicating that we are locked in with the runway and with the ILS approach. So once we hear that beep, a few things need to happen. First, we're going to need to switch GPS to nav, and we're going to need to switch navigation to approach. So we're going to go ahead and slow this down as we are approaching Chicago pretty quickly. We're also going to lower our altitude for our approach, as well as lower our speed for our initial approach speed, which is about, well, let's say 250 knots. We can actually speed this up just a tad. So just before we turn right towards runway 4R, we're going to set that frequency we just typed into the radio to active. That way we can connect to the runway frequency, and we'll do that just about as we turn right, which will be in about 7 minutes or so, but we sped it up 4 times, so in about a minute we'll do that. Minute and a half. In preparation for landing, we can already arm the speed brake by pressing Shift and slash next to the Shift at the same time. And that speed brake you saw move, it's now in the armed position, which means as soon as the wheels touch the ground, the spoilers will engage, and that'll make us stick to the ground, which is what we want. can actually hold at about 5,000 feet. And also we have an indicator here saying that yes, our speed brake, our spoilers are armed, so we know exactly what to, that we know exactly we did that step. So once we are on the ILS approach, you'll notice two diamonds pop up, one here and one here on your artificial horizon. These indicate how to the left and to the right you are of the runway, and how high or low you are on the approach to that runway. Ideally, we want these diamonds to be right in the middle, and you'll see that as soon as we enter our ILS approach. So as you can see, we are approaching that right. So we're gonna that right turn towards the runway. So we are gonna hit this button, and it becomes active. As you can see, this light pops up. The nav1 light pops up. Once we hear the beep, we know we've entered that frequency. As well, you will see the letters ID spring to life right here as well. Once we see that, and once we hear that code, we're in business, because that means we've locked into the runway frequency. Oh, there it is. ID popped up. We'll hear the code. There it is. We're hearing the beeps of the runway. Every runway will have a different beep. You know, it's not going to be like the same beep, 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 depending on the frequency, of course. So we're done with the radio. We can turn that off. Now what we want to go ahead and start doing is we're going to turn this to normal speed. What we're going to want to do is go ahead, we're in line with the runway, switch it to nav. Now you will see that, look, there's a diamond, there is a diamond. We want these to be in the middle, and the airplane is doing that right now. It's making this diamond go in the middle. As you can see, we're turning right. And to get this diamond to be right here where we want it to, because right now we're below the glide scope, we want to hit approach right here. Now we are in perfect settings for the ILS approach. So now we just want to go ahead and lower the speed to our approach speed of about 180 knots. And we'll continue to lose speed here. As of right now, we're not touching the joystick at all. We can actually take the GPS off by pressing Shift 3. GPS pops down like that. As you can see, I'm not manipulating anything right now. It's all the autopilot and ILS taking over for us. As you can see, this diamond is approaching the middle, right where we want it to. You can see now it wants us to lose altitude because we want to keep that in the middle. There's our runways. We're going to line up right with this one right here. So we want to go ahead and start lowering our flaps, just so we can get ready for landing. Do it again. You can see the diamonds are getting positioned right in the middle where we want them to. We can actually go ahead and further decrease our speed, like so. Perfect. We are getting closer to the runway. We can go ahead and lower the flaps even more. We're going to go ahead and lower our gear as well. All gear are down, green lights, perfect. There is Midway, there's all the residential areas surrounding it, so it is a tricky approach. Even sometimes with the ILS landing system in place, but we're on the perfect glide scope, perfect speed, perfect altitude, right in line with that runway, perfect in the middle, that diamond. So it's going to be a great approach. Once again, I'm not touching the joystick, I'm not manipulating the altitude. In fact, the altitude is still stuck at 5,000 feet. The ILS Approach is doing everything for us. Another tidbit of information, these lights at the end of the runway, they're called PAPPI Lights. And right now you can see 2 red and 2 white. That indicates we're on the right altitude for the approach. If, say, there are 3 red and 1 white light, so there's more red than white, that means you're too low. And if there's 4 red and no white, that means you're really low. Conversely, then, if it's 3 white and 1 red, you would be too high. And if it's all 4 white lights, that means you're way too high. But right now we see a good mix of white and red, so we're on the right altitude for the approach. We're going to go ahead and lower our speed even more. We're going to go ahead and make sure our flaps are all the way down for landing. Downtown Chicago should be straight ahead. You can see the skyline here. Oh, there it is. Everything is good to go. This is going to be a perfect landing, I think. Hopefully. If I don't mess anything up. So right before we touch down, what you are going to want to do manually is shut the auto throttle off and then pull the throttle all the way back on your own, because we need to cut off that speed. We want to touch down with the throttle at 0, ready for the reverse thrust to deploy. Go ahead and keep on losing speed. Now you can turn the auto throttle off by just pressing this, or Shift and R at the same time. That's the keyboard shortcut for the auto throttle off. Downtown Chicago's skyline is straight ahead of us. We gotta focus on that runway first. Alright, so get ready to turn that auto throttle off. So have your Shift and R pressed at the same time. Right about as soon as we come over the runway. So right about now, press Shift and R, lower the throttle all the way down to 0. Go ahead and press Z to take off the autopilot. Gently take that aircraft to the ground. There we go. Reverse thrust, and then brake if you need to, as we are coming on the end of the runway here rather quickly. But the auto throttle should be, actually we don't even need to brake. The auto throttle, or the reverse thrust, I apologize, will go ahead and make us come to a nice stop. We can do that, and there's the end of the runway. So as you can see, it's a very short runway. So you can go ahead and exit the runway, turning right towards the terminal. Perfect. So we just did an ILS approach. The autopilot did everything for us, so we can go ahead and get rid of that noise by just pressing this. Turns off that radio. Perfect. We can actually see how well we did. Do an instant replay about 100 seconds. Go into an outside view of the landing. Go ahead and see how we did. Coming in for the approach. As you can hear, we cut off the thrust. There's the landing stuck to the ground. Very nice. can see, we're lined up right in the middle of that runway. Very nice. Very nice landing. We can actually take a passenger view actually as well. We can see how smooth it was if you were a passenger. We can go ahead and do that as well. Let's take a look real quick. Also, while this is going down, just a quick recap of what we did. First, we need to find out the frequency of the runway we are landing at, which for 4R and midway was 111.5. Also need to find out the heading, which was 44 degrees. We need to put the frequency in the radio, set that active, and also put the heading into the course as well. And then we let the autopilot do its thing until we're close to the airport. There's that touchdown, stuck to the ground, very nice. Reverse thrust. It was a pretty nice landing at a very short runway. So, perfect. So as I was saying, we were, what we did, we put the course, the heading of the runway here. We also had to manipulate the navigation and GPS button to nav instead of GPS. Also, we utilized the approach switch for the airplane to glide itself to the ground. And there's the ILS approach. Basically, we didn't touch the joystick at all for that landing, at all. Anyways, if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and comment that into the comment section. I'll be sure to reply to those. If you have any more questions regarding Flight Simulator 10, once again, this was the ILS tutorial. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope this helps out for you guys. Happy flying.